So let's talk about this, my friends. Uh, okay. There we go. So, what this is, we talked about it last time. Quote from John F. Kennedy, right? That idea that within the word crisis, we have two characters: we have danger and we have opportunity. And I encourage, I mentioned this last year, but the idea, maybe the 80-20 principle, maybe we spend, 20% of our time worrying about the danger part, because trust me, there's plenty of danger. But the other 80%, let's think about opportunity. I'll be honest with you, I cannot tell you how many programming classes I've taken in the last 3 months. We have opportunity, but we need to do something. Things will change, and in significant ways. So, but there's opportunity, right? So, what is it? Let's take a look. So, what for you? You have some advantages, right? It's crazy. Now, remember, I made the example of banks and how, well, think about shopping malls too, right? But think about banks. Banks have all these legacy costs, right? All these branches that are basically going to, be their death knell if they don't get rid of them, right? Because those are added expenses that their competitor who's online doesn't have, and they can operate at much lower cost. Similarly, you're young, so you have some advantages. Believe it or not, it's crazy, right? Because you always think, oh, you got to have experience and all this stuff. Well, guess what? No, not necessarily the case. One of the advantages is that this is happening in real time. It is really, you've seen it. Since COVID, it's blown me away how fast this is happening. This to the edges, decentralized, efficient. Classes before you, even first semester last year, the last 10, it's over 10 years now. They had to believe I have a student who was probably 8 years ago, and Hendricks, you're an idiot. And I admit I'm an idiot, okay? But he goes, you're an idiot. He goes, you know what? This idea of, feudalism, it'll never happen. No way. And yet at the same time, you have Google now, providing housing. You have Cisco providing housing. You have they bust their employees in and out. They have an open buffet. They got a gym. They'll clean your clothes. I think they'll take care of you much like the feudal state did. Anyway, but my point is this, is you tangibly see no longer theory or ideas, but you're actually starting to see it in a much more palpable way. So I believe that's an advantage if you take it into account. Once again, is recognizing the environment. Think of how many people have no clue. They have no idea what's going on. They think it's COVID, and they're all focused on COVID. Like, don't get me wrong, COVID is a pandemic, for crying out loud. It's massive, it's huge. But the structural change that's happening is in the rearview mirror 20 years from now, 10 years from now. That'll be the thing that will still leave its legacy. Definitely do what we need to do for COVID, but realize what's structurally happening is this to the edges byproduct of technology. And as a result, if you're aware of that, can make decisions and take action. Those around you that don't necessarily see it or know about it, you'll have a step up there. And the other thing you have is you don't have legacy costs. Remember, legacy costs are those costs left over from the previous paradigm. And realize that myself, your parents, they went to college, spent a lot of money on education. They have a lot of experience in whatever industry or thing they do. Well, guess what? For many of us, it doesn't matter a lick going forward. It's like we're all starting from ground zero now. And it's like, okay, now the new model, education, you think schools are going to be around? Are you kidding? Too expensive. States can't afford this. Do you think they're going to be able to foot the bill for all the unemployment and then pay all this, all the schools and everything else? My point is this, is you don't have those legacy costs. You don't have years of invested time, energy, and money. And as a result, you're lean and mean. And so much like an online bank that basically has an advantage just by the mere fact that they're not weighed down by the old model. Use that. And then opportunity. So much of this will be the perspective and the attitude you take going forward. Because remember we talking about social mood, it's really hard to separate yourself from social mood. When everybody is going a direction, it is really hard. So I encourage you, keep your eyes on the opportunity, because most will be sucked to the danger and probably pain as well. So if you can keep your eyes on the opportunity, motivation will be there, direction, vision. So opportunity. Now, you do have a disadvantage, and that is time. This is not a year ago when you had time before. Everybody before you, they had time. And I have to say, some of them actually took action. And I got to say, I keep in contact with many of them. And it just gives me such great joy to see them thriving. And I just, it's awesome. But you know what? Many of them, most of them did nothing. And guess what? Then time's not a disadvantage, because they're in the same boat you are, right? So my point is, what's past, we're going to learn about this, called sunk costs. Sunk costs are costs that you've already spent and really should not be taken into account as you make decisions going forward. So all of that is, forget it. Now, the question is, what do we do now and going forward? All right. So a little strategy here. First thing is that of thinking. Boy, you know what? I know many of you, love playing the games, and they're all over the phones and TikTok and all this stuff, right? I mean, the literal black holes of time that are everywhere, right? Like landmines. But I encourage you, turn it off. Turn off the noise. There's a lot of, it's interesting. One of the things they talked about in Sovereign Individual, 20 years ago, they said as we went forward that information would be plentiful, and as a result, it would be very difficult and there'd be a lot of noise. They basically said it would be a lot more important to get the big picture right than to get the small picture right, because in the small picture, there'd be so much noise, it would be hard to really tell what really is going on. So as that goes, it's really important that we think, and we think in this big picture. Turn off the noise. Think about where we're at, what we're doing. What about you? What are your strengths? What are your interests? And how does that apply to where we're going? That idea of incentives and being able to anticipate. Remember, I mentioned the idea that if I dropped a $100 bill in the middle of New York City before COVID, that I could predict somebody would pick it up. And the idea is because we understand incentives. People have an incentive to pick up that $100 bill, and therefore we can anticipate their behavior. And the same way, as we go forward, it's going to be important for us to try to focus more. I don't think most people have spent a lot of time thinking about incentives in our life and in others' lives. But if we can take that into account, we might be able to better anticipate, that idea of cities. You think about who in the right mind is going to want to live in a city? Cities have decaying infrastructure. Now, if you have technology that can send you to the edge where you can have clean air, be safe, secure, and be able to build new infrastructure that you need that is more, modern, like solar panels, satellites, whatever. Doesn't that seem to make a lot more sense? So once again, trying to use those, and as we go forward. This idea. You know what? Have you ever somebody say, "Oh, you're just so lucky"? And it's like, okay, whatever. But here's this idea. It comes from the author of Dilbert, which is this cartoon, and I love it. It's the idea is that, hey, you know what? You can improve your luckiness. And my point, and his point is this. He says, you know what? If you wanted to get lucky and get struck by lightning, you'd never get hit, right? I mean, it's like 1 in 10 million or something like that. But guess what? If you move to Texas in, say, July, and went to the highest point in Texas with a metal rod in the middle of a storm, guess what? You might be the luckiest person in the world. I don't know. But the point is this, is that you can change your luck. You can increase or decrease your luck depending on factors. One of them is location. Where are you? Who are your friends? Who are the people you talk with? What are the ideas you think and discuss? How do you spend your time? All of these can change your luck. I encourage you. We call them in economics, we call them positive externalities. Positive externality is where you receive a benefit for something you did not even do. You know, all your friends, your whole neighborhood gets vaccinated if they come up with one when they do for COVID-19. Everybody gets vaccinated, and you don't for some crazy reason. But guess what? You didn't take any action, but everybody else got vaccinated, and now your chance of getting COVID is less because they took action and you got a benefit. Well, similarly, this idea of getting lucky. And so creating positive externalities in your choices. So I encourage you to make good choices, ones that will increase your positive externalities. And then context. The idea is that hopefully, what do I know nothing. I'm a school teacher. I know zero and I don't claim to know anything. But some of these people know quite a bit. And the idea that if you understand the context of where we're at right now, the dynamics, the structural change that's taking place, this idea of a decentralized world, what will that look like as we continue to go forward? 6 months ago, who would have ever known that en masse people would be working from home? Crazy. How about this one? Facebook says that they're going to pay their employees based upon the cost of living of where the employees live. Whoa, that might be a game changer. Do you think that Facebook is going to want to employ somebody living in the cost of living standards of New York City or somebody who's living in India? Both of them can do the same job. Interesting. So if we probably want to think with this new paradigm. And the new paradigm is it's decentralized. Probably means there's going to be less government. And guess what? That means there's going to be less assistance. It means we're going to need to be more self-reliant. And we're going to need more grit. I know we live in a culture where parents are probably doing some of your homework. Your parents coddle you and take care of you. Well, that's nice now, but in the scheme of things, many, at least the studies have shown, it seems to make children weaker. And so the idea that going forward, you're probably going to need, I hate to use the term because it's just so cliche, but grit. Okay. But the idea that we're going to need to be tough. It's not going to be easy. And that's one more reason why it's great to have each other. And skill building. I mentioned the fact that I've been taking programming classes like a maniac here. I think that's going to be a useful skill. Is that going to be the only thing needed? I don't think so. I know somebody that's working at Apple, and you know what? They need to use Excel, the spreadsheet. That's a skill. How about database? You know what? 3D printing, for crying out loud. Decentralized. That is going to be revolutionary, I think. You may not need to be a pro, but these are all things that if we become competent at them, will probably add value to us, make us more useful, and probably aid to our success. Some areas to think about that, maybe not everybody, some of everybody's thinking about, but farming, en masse, on average, globally, incomes are rising. Well, if people in India, in Malaysia, in third world countries are making more money, they eat more protein. As they eat more protein, well, guess what? They need more grains to feed the protein, pigs, corn, pigs, chickens, and so forth. The point is there's going to be bigger demand for farming as we go forward. You may not have thought of that before, but it might be an idea you might want to move towards. Coding, programming, blockchain. We'll talk more about blockchain, but blockchain, I believe, we talked about Gordon Moore. And Gordon Moore's, remember, the exponential growth of the microchip. Well, there's a problem, though. Because of that exponential growth, remember, it's the speed and power of the microprocessor doubles every 18 months. Well, what that does, it causes a tremendous problem. Because think of an automobile that keeps getting a bigger and bigger engine put onto the same chassis, the same frame. Engine gets big enough, you know what? It's more than the chassis can withstand. And so what we find is that Moore's law, which says that the microprocessor doubles in speed and power every 18 months, leads to something else called Bell's law. And Bell's law says that roughly every 10 years, we need new architecture. on which to build the chip. So back in the 60s, we had things called mainframe computers. Then it led to the next generation, next architecture of PCs. We go forward to the internet, to the cloud, and now the cloud looks like it's basically run its course. So the question is, what will be the next architecture on which we'll build? And one other little tidbit to throw out, quantum computing is something to think about as well, which might lead to this idea of architecture. But nevertheless, my point is that many believe that blockchain will be the next architecture. And if you can get familiar and competent in blockchain, odds are there'll be demand for that in more than in, say, working at the shopping mall. All right, and then here's just one little, I just threw it, I just kind of stirred it up. This thing called graphene. It's amazing. I haven't heard anything in the news, for years now, but it's basically a single layer of carbon, which has the strength of steel, but the flexibility of fabric. Insane, incredible. And remember, technology, the cost of technology drops, right? So I don't know, I haven't followed it lately, but maybe it's something you want to look into, graphene and the idea of, anyways, look into it if you're curious. Last thing, before I let you go, and that is this idea. I learned something. I used to play competitive golf, and during this period, I learned a lesson that really was powerful for me, and maybe it will be for you. And that is that there's two things: fear and excitement. Fear and excitement. And the idea is, when you're scared, your pulse, your heart starts to pound faster, move faster. Your hands might get sweaty. You might start to shake a little bit. That's fear, right? Excitement. Say you're at an amusement park waiting to get on this, most exciting roller coaster there. You're waiting in line. Your heart's pounding. Your pulse is racing. Your hands are probably sweaty, and you might even be shaking a little bit. Whoa, wait a second. Are you scared or are you excited? Isn't that crazy? Your body is reacting the same way. What's the difference? The difference is what's going on up here. When you're afraid, you're thinking of all the things that can go wrong. When you're excited, you're thinking about all the things that can go well and go right. We're at a point here that I believe is a tipping point. And as we go forward, I truly believe you'll be much better served as we go forward if you look on with excitement as opposed to fear. I think you'll make clearer-minded decisions. I think you'll have more excitement. You'll have more energy. You'll draw more people to you, people that also will want to solve problems and not basically live in the past. So I encourage you, and I send this out with just heartfelt, that I think it'll make your life a lot better.